Hi, this is Brian Koska. I am doing a video interview with Christina Koska today. Hi, Christina. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Christina, can you talk to us about your current position and what it entails on a day-to-day basis? Go through possibly the people that you manage and the type of law that you're involved in.
Yes, I'm an attorney. I'm of counsel with my law firm. I spend my time working with younger associates as well as partners in commercial and business litigation.
That's great. And you've been there for a number of years now. Can you walk us through kind of the pre-COVID days and, how you're established right now in terms of remote and hybrid work? Were there a lot of people in the office before COVID, and how has that gradually shifted to where you are today?
There were a number of people in the office, and it functioned as a traditional law firm might, um, with some people working remotely as needed, but not primarily. And when COVID happened, we shifted to a completely remote model, and that lingered for quite some time after COVID. And in the last few years, more people have gone into the office, but we've kind of maintained a bit of a remote feel in some ways, um, meeting daily via Teams. But for the most part, as long as people are getting their work done, it doesn't quite matter where they are if they don't have to be in court.
Sure. And you talked about Teams. Are there any other management tools that you guys use? Is it phone or email? Are there any other collaborative tools, maybe Zoom?
It's a lot of Teams and chat via Teams, texting, email, a lot of email. Um, Most of our video conferences are through Teams, and then we share files through SharePoint and through File Explorer.
Okay. And you told these there. We were going through your younger associates and if you checked in on them, on a day-to-day basis. And I think you were just talking about briefs and how often you check in with them.
Yeah, daily for sure, multiple times throughout a day, multiple times throughout a project. It's very collaborative work, pretty much in any context, whether it be, you know, um, preparing papers or litigation. So we're in constant contact.
Got it. Got it. And with some of these more junior associates, how do you look at career growth? Do you take an active management with their career growth? Do you work on, does your firm supply training possibilities? Is there required annual training that attorneys go through?
I think it's a lot of learning kind of as you go. So we in particular try to immerse them in all aspects of litigation pretty quickly so that the best way to learn is by doing, so that we have them kind of getting a hand in a little bit of everything, whether it's taking depositions, drafting pleadings, talking to clients, and if it's something that they're not yet prepared to do, um, kind of sitting in on meetings and kind of always being present on calls. If it's not something they can bill, it's something that they'll have to kind of use as their, learning process.
Sure. And I know your industry, there's some industries that require annual training, or I think they're called CLEs in your industry. So, can you kind of walk us through what's required on an annual basis to be an attorney?
Well, it's continuing legal education, and yes, we are required, and it varies state to state. So it depends on the state you're licensed in. So for in New Jersey, for instance, it's 24 hours, and you report every other year, um, and that's 24 credits, and it pretty much works out to a credit an hour. New York has its own, Pennsylvania has its own, and so on and so forth. But that's, the firm makes sure that you comply, and you have to be on top of it, in order to maintain your license.
Got it. And I have to imagine in writing briefs and working on cases, there's certain times where you might have to make a pivot and you're going in one direction and have to go in another direction. How does that process work? And when you have to make a change like that, um, who directs that change? Is it you? Is it the associate that might find something? Is it a collaborative team-based approach? Can you kind of walk me through a situation like that where you might have gone down one path and had to change?
Yeah, it can come from just about anywhere. Our work is very client-based. Our information is coming from a client. Um, in litigation, you're dealing with discovery and learning new facts every day. So what you start with as your theory of the theory of your case oftentimes changes throughout the process. New arguments arise, old arguments fall off. And it's very collaborative. It can come from almost anywhere. It can come from an associate's research. It can come from a partner's directive. Um, so yeah, it's a very collaborative effort.
Okay. And how do you make sure that nobody's offended by, changing direction? I'm sure there's ownership in certain aspects of this. If you have to go in a different direction, do you ever see somebody be offended? And if so, how do you guys tackle that?
When a mistake is made, it has to be dealt with. And that can sometimes be tricky. Um, if a position is just changing naturally, that's kind of a different thing. I think it's the tone in which you speak, it's the manner in which you communicate the mistake or the change in course or whatever it might be. People may in turn be offended at times, but that's something that is usually dealt with if it pops up. I think, at least in our environment and with myself included, we deal with it pretty head on, and keep kind of a very open policy so that you can voice those concerns right away.
And is that typically done in a public environment? I mean, you guys are moving really fast with deadlines and such. If a mistake is made, for example, in a brief, is that done offline on a one-to-one basis, or is it discussed during in the context of the entire team in front of the whole team, or does it depend?
Again, I think it depends. A lot of times when we're working on something, it's out in the open. We're discussing it. So, whether we want that stated one way or another way, it's spoken in the group context. If it's something that was done incorrectly, or if it was a matter of somebody not doing what they needed to do or when they needed to do it, that's more of a private conversation. So in terms of like the collaborative work, it's generally done out in the open, and you kind of have to have a bit of a thick skin in terms of understanding that it is a collaborative effort, and an opinion is not necessarily criticism. But in terms of something a little more serious, for lack of a better word, that's something that's done separately, and then we would walk the person through, this is what was supposed to be done, what happened, what was your process, like where did it go wrong, why didn't you meet that, whatever the issue might have been.
Sure, sure. And it's a good segue to the next question. In terms of, what you do and the enormous stress and deadlines that you guys are falling under all the time, have there been certain instances where the team might come under stress or there's conflict within the team, or people disagree on a certain approach and you have a team discussion about it, but does somebody make that final decision and say, hey, really appreciate, gather up all the opinions and tell you to go forth? Or is it the team has to vote on something?
No, it's generally the partner whose case it is, who's overseeing it. That's generally where the final call comes from. The most senior attorney, the attorney whose case it is, it's collaborative in a sense, but at the end of the day, it's not like a vote to what's the correct path. It's, a decision is made that this is the approach we're taking. And the law is the law. So there's not a lot of wiggle room often. So yeah, that's a little more definitive.
Okay. Makes total sense. And then in terms of management decisions, whether somebody got promoted that shouldn't have been promoted, or a decision, to go hybrid or go remote, and it wasn't the right decision. Have you guys come across decisions like that? And have there been any ones that haven't gone as planned and the team has to get together and change approach, or have you not been faced with that type of challenge yet?
I mean, I think in some ways we have been, in some ways, the hybrid model may have not worked for a certain attorney. In some cases, decisions were made and that attorney, moved on.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's definitely been difficult decisions like that. Yeah.
Sure. And then in terms of, working in this hybrid environment, it's a little bit of a change in the typical environment. I know when you were at your other law firm, it was all in person all the time. Um, how have you adapted to that? How have you changed? If you look back over the course of the last 15 years or so, and now we're in a completely different climate than when we were pre-COVID, and in person all the time, nobody was talking about remote. Have you changed your approach with how you communicate both with your partners who are, senior to you and the junior associates who are junior to you? Has there been a change in how you communicate with them, whether it be the frequency or the type of communication, or is it because your industry, it's really just been the same over the course of the time?
No, I think for certain it has changed a bit. I think you need to be more deliberate in your communications when you are not in person. I think there's more personal responsibility. In a way, you have to be more accountable for your time. And so when discussions are being had or decisions are being made, if that communication is happening over email, you need to be precise in your communication. If it's happening, sometimes it's quick text to make quick decisions. So you really have to be adaptive and you need to be clear in all sense of your communication. So I think I find it more flexible and I find being in this more hybrid environment almost better in a sense sometimes than the in-person all the time um, situation.
And you feel like you get more work accomplished because in your industry, a lot of times it is kind of a little bit of a solo type atmosphere, right? Where you have to do your research and you have to keep your head down. Is that one of the things that's a benefit to this hybrid environment where you can kind of go off and be in solitude and work and research on your own rather than be in an office and potentially be distracted?
I mean, it has its pros and cons, of course, and I think that the pros being like what you said, it's easy to you don't have that interruption, the knock on the door, a lot of those things, so that you can put your head down and grind out something that's maybe more complicated. But the flip side is you don't have that knock on the door. It is a little more isolating. It is a little more individual. Um, you do lose a little bit of that casual collaboration that you can have in an office. I think that our ability to have time in office as well as having a hybrid and having the flexibility to be hybrid and not so FaceTime concentrated is a benefit. I think it's a benefit. Our younger associates do have a lot more time in the office, and I think that that's beneficial because as a younger attorney, you do learn a lot in that in-person environment. But
Got it. So it sounds like it's very much a lead by example, collaborative approach, and experience-driven model where, you're really looking to push people and give them as much experience as possible and then guide them through the way, through the ups and downs. Is that a fair assessment?
yeah, I think it's a good assessment. Yeah,
Great. Well, thanks for the time today. Appreciate it.
no problem.